"Hey, have some respect. Stand up." The hiss came from a woman in a floral dress 2 rows back. It started as a whisper, but as the first notes of the Star-Spangled Banner began to swell from the high school marching band's brass section, the whisper turned into a ripple of indignation. The entire stadium had risen. Thousands of parents, grandparents, and graduates were on their feet, hands over their hearts, eyes fixed on the flag fluttering at the 50-yard line. It was a moment of unity, a moment of collective pride. Except for one man. He was sitting in the aisle seat of the bleachers, right near the front. He was wearing a faded olive-drab field jacket, despite the sweltering June heat. He wore a hat pulled low over his eyes. He didn't move. He didn't look up. He just sat there, staring at his lap while the people around him stood tall. To the onlookers, he was a stain on the ceremony. He was the embodiment of everything wrong with the modern world: apathy, disrespect, a lack of patriotism. A father to his left nudged his wife and pointed, shaking his head in disgust. "Unbelievable," he muttered loud enough for the old man to hear. "Men died for that flag, and he can't even be bothered to get off his rear end for 2 minutes." The old man, Thomas, heard every word. He heard the whispers. He felt the burning glares boring into the back of his neck. He wanted to say something. He wanted to turn around and scream, but he didn't. He just gripped the armrests of his folding chair until his knuckles turned white. He closed his eyes and listened to the anthem. To the crowd, the song was a tradition. To Thomas, it was the sound of choppers lifting off in a hot LZ. It was the sound of rain on a poncho. It was the sound of silence after a firefight. If you believe that true patriotism isn't always visible to the naked eye, type "respect" in the comments right now. Because what happened next taught an entire stadium a lesson they will never forget. The tension in Section C was palpable. As the anthem reached and the rocket's red glare, the murmur of disapproval grew louder. People were genuinely offended. This wasn't just laziness to them. It was a political statement. It was an insult. Standing near the aisle was Corporal Miller, a military police officer who had been assigned to security detail for the graduation. He was young, sharp, and took his uniform seriously. He saw the disturbance. He saw the parents gesturing toward the seated man. Miller's jaw tightened. He had lost friends overseas. He knew the cost of the flag. Seeing someone blatantly disrespected in a public forum, causing a scene, was something he couldn't ignore. Miller adjusted his belt and began to walk up the steps. His boots crunched on the metal bleachers. The crowd parted slightly to let him through, many of them nodding in approval. Finally, their expressions said, "Someone is going to set this guy straight. Make him stand or kick him out." Miller approached Thomas. From the side, the anthem was hitting its crescendo. "Oh, say, does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave?" Miller stopped right next to Thomas. He leaned down, his shadow falling over the old man. "Sir," Miller said, his voice low but firm, cutting through the music. "You need to stand for the anthem. It's protocol. You're causing a disturbance." Thomas didn't look up immediately. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked tired, incredibly tired. "I can't, son," Thomas whispered, his voice raspy. Miller's eyes narrowed. He saw a man who looked healthy enough from the waist up. He saw a man who had walked in here, or so he assumed. "Sir, I'm not asking. Everyone else is standing. Show some respect for the flag. Get up." The crowd was watching. They were waiting for the justice. They wanted the old man to be humiliated, to be forced to comply. The father who had complained earlier crossed his arms, a smug look on his face. Thomas slowly lifted his head. He pushed his hat back. His eyes were wet. He looked at Corporal Miller with a mixture of sadness and infinite patience. "I would give anything to stand, Corporal," Thomas said. "I used to stand tall. I stood tall in the Ashau Valley in '68. I stood tall until the mortar hit." With a trembling hand, Thomas reached down to the blanket that was draped over his lower body. A blanket everyone had assumed was just padding for the metal seat or protection against a draft. He pulled it back. The crowd gasped. The sound was audible even over the band. There were no legs. The pants of his olive-drab uniform were pinned up neatly just above the knee. Below that, there was nothing. Just empty space where legs should have been. And then, as Thomas shifted his jacket slightly, the sunlight caught a glimmer of metal on his chest. It wasn't a button. It was a purple heart-shaped medal with a profile of George Washington in the center, flanked by a silver star. Corporal Miller froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like he might faint. The smug look vanished from the father in the row behind. The woman in the floral dress covered her mouth with her hand. The whispers died instantly, replaced by a suffocating, heavy silence that felt louder than the drums. Miller looked at the empty pant legs. Then he looked at the purple heart. Then he looked into Thomas's eyes. He saw the history there. He saw the pain of a 20-year-old kid waking up in a field hospital to find half his body gone. He saw the 50 years of navigating a world built for people who can walk. He realized that this man wasn't sitting out of disrespect. He was sitting because he had given his legs to the very flag they were singing about. He had paid for his seat in blood. The anthem was ending. "O'er the land of the free." Miller didn't retreat. He didn't stammer an excuse. He did the only thing a soldier could do. He dropped to his right knee. He went down into the dirt and popcorn of the stadium aisle, lowering himself until he was at eye level with Thomas. He wasn't acting as an authority figure anymore. He was a subordinate in the presence of a superior, and the home of the brave. As the final note rang out, Miller snapped a salute. It was fierce, it was rigid, and it was directed solely at Thomas. "Forgive me, sir," Miller said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't see. I didn't know." Thomas reached out and placed a hand on Miller's shoulder. "It's okay, son. You are doing your job. You are defending the flag. That's what we do." Miller didn't get up when the music stopped. He stayed there, kneeling. "Sir, if you allow me, I would be honored to stand guard for you for the remainder of the ceremony." Thomas smiled, a genuine warmth breaking through his weathered face. "I'd like that, Corporal." Miller stood up, but he didn't go back to his post. He turned his back to the field. He stood at parade rest, right next to Thomas's chair, facing the crowd. He glared back at them. He glared at the father, at the woman in the floral dress, at everyone who had judged a book they hadn't bothered to open. His presence was a shield. He was saying, without a word, "If you have a problem with him, you go through me." The reaction in the stands was a slow, rolling wave of shame. The father, who had pointed earlier, sat down heavily, putting his head in his hands. He was crying. He leaned forward and tapped Thomas on the shoulder. "Sir," the man choked out, I'm so sorry. I'm a fool." Thomas turned and nodded. "We all make mistakes. Just teach your kids to look a little closer next time." The ceremony continued, but the dynamic had shifted entirely. The graduates walked across the stage, but eyes kept drifting back to Section C. To the old man in the field jacket and the young MP standing sentinel beside him. It became a lesson more powerful than any commencement speech given that day. It was a lesson on assumption. We live in a culture of instant judgment. We see a snippet of video, a single image, or a momentary action, and we decide we know the whole story. We label people. Lazy, disrespectful, unpatriotic. We get angry because it feels good to be self-righteous, but we rarely pause to ask why. We rarely look for the hidden wounds. Thomas didn't refuse to stand. He physically couldn't. But in his heart, he was standing taller than anyone in that stadium. He had been standing for 50 years, carrying the weight of his sacrifice every single day. The people around him were standing on legs they had been given for free. He was sitting on the price he had paid. When the ceremony ended, Thomas tried to wheel himself toward the exit. He couldn't. He was blocked. Not by a crowd of angry protesters, but by a wall of people wanting to shake his hand. The graduates, the new generation, came over. They didn't see a cripple. They saw a hero. Corporal Miller stayed with him the whole time, clearing a path, ensuring that Thomas was treated with the dignity of a visiting head of state. As they reached the parking lot, Miller helped Thomas load his chair into his van. "Sir," Miller asked, "does it bother you? The staring?" Thomas looked at the sun setting over the football field. "It used to," he said. "Used to make me bitter. I thought, I gave my legs for you and you look at me like I'm a nuisance. But then I realized, they don't know. And if they don't know, that means they haven't had to see what I saw. That means the war stayed over there. And that's worth it." Miller stood at attention as the van drove away. He realized he had just met the best man he would ever know. The story of Thomas is a warning to all of us. When you see someone who doesn't fit your mold of what a patriot or a good citizen looks like, take a breath. Pause. Look for the wheelchair. Look for the scars. Look for the invisible battles they might be fighting. The man sitting on the bench while you work might have a broken back. The woman not singing the anthem might have lost her voice, screaming for help that never came. True honor isn't about performing for the crowd. It's about what you carry inside you. It's about the quiet sacrifices that no one claps for. If this story reminded you to lead with curiosity instead of judgment, and to honor those who carry the permanent marks of service, please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Join us. We are building a community that refuses to forget. A community that looks deeper. Share this video to remind others that sometimes the person sitting down has stood up for us more than we will ever know. Don't judge the cover. Read the story. And to all the Thomases out there, sitting quietly with your memories and your scars, we see you, we honor you, and we thank you.